So, I've been, suicidally depressed all my life, and there got to be a point in 2006 where I'd had enough, and I was gonna use my shotgun to take myself out. Figured it'd be quick, efficient. It's down in my room, and I remember laying on my bed. It's a single shot shotgun. And I'm laying on my bed. I remember trying to get it angled, and I put it in my mouth, and the bead was hurting the roof of my mouth. And so I'm like, ow, that hurts. Before I splatter my gray matter all over the wall and give my family PTSD for the rest of their lives, let's turn this over so that the roof of my mouth doesn't get gouged up. And it's weird the kind of thinking that you have in that state of mind where little details just become all-encompassing. So I didn't end up pulling the trigger because I thought about my family walking in on me, but I guess think that my sensitive roof of my mouth, and I'm still here.
So as my depression fluctuates, so does my will to or desire to kill myself. And I'll never actually do it out of respect for my loved ones, but I certainly have a vague plan. And the more I thought about the plan, the more I realized there's not really a flawless way to commit suicide. And by flawless, I mean no one sees it. For example, my vague plan would be to just go into the mountains, hike half the day, just the most secluded place I could go, and find something to jump off of. But then one of my concerns is the endorphins from the hike would make me not want to kill myself anymore. I'd feel really good. But then I'd just be lost in the woods without food or water and then die anyway, but not by my choice. And then let's say I did find a really good spot that I thought was secluded where I could jump, I have a bad sense of direction, and I really am afraid that my last thoughts on this earth as I'm falling are, oh no, I'm going to be in this girl's selfie.
I'm gonna move to bed because that's probably me and my depressive element. It's annoying when people talk about depression to me because I think I grew up with this idea that it's feeling low or the blues, but for me it's just this. It's paralysis, and I'm in just bed for 2 weeks at a time, and it's hard to think of a real specific story because there's just a lot. But if mine's kind of a mix of mania. I mean, it's a whole. I mean, I guess I take medicine for bipolar. I do, but it's like lupus. It's hard to diagnose. There's lots of different manifestations. But one of mine is moving. I moved 8 times in 3 years when I was in New York. That was partly because of circumstances, but I've moved at people. Just to spite them, across the country. I moved to get out of a relationship rather than have a painful breakup. I moved from New York back to Salt Lake City. Partly, that's part of the story. I eat like crazy at night. I had a doctor tell me I was self-soothing. And by crazy, I mean crazy, to the point. I purged, I've done that, where I'll eat and then I'll throw up, which I can't pull that off. It sucks. I don't know if you've ever made yourself throw up. I don't know if that's relatable. I guess people have, right? I don't know. But it feels so bad. And you actually gain weight because your body is what the fuck are we doing? So the next day. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. I feel like my stories are just, they're boring. It's boring. This is what depression is right here. This is my office. When I go to work at depression, this is my office. And here I am. Yeah.
So I've come a long way to get here. In fact, just from backstage. But that's a long way when you spend your life walking in circles. So I want to give a quick disclaimer at the moment, because this show is incredibly inspiring and entertaining. But a lot of people have trouble with my accent. So if you don't think it's inspiring and entertaining, it's probably because you can't understand me. But if you can't understand me, just nod and clap, because it is inspiring and entertaining. So storytelling has been around since the dawn of time. And if we can imagine some cave people when they first started drawing antelopes on cave walls. Now I say cave people for two reasons. One, because it's 2017, and because of gender equality, there's no more cavemen anymore. And two, because if I said Denisovans, your mind wouldn't be able to associate with that and easily enter the frame of reference. So again, storytelling, when they would all get around the campfire and they would talk and they would draw attention to these things that they were afraid of. So all these different unknowns that were in their lives at the time. So again, that noise that happened, was it the monster at the end of the hill? Was it that beast that made the footprints? Or was it the god that lived in the mountain? And that's what I love about storytelling, because it draws attention to fears and scary things that we don't really know what's about. So I love a transformer character in storytelling. If we all know Devil's Tower in Wyoming, everyone say yes?
Yes.
Who told a lie there? Come on, Devil's Tower. It's in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but originally back in those days they didn't know what it was because again it was this massive big mountain that was totally different from all the surroundings. So they came up with this story about a massive big bear that would come and scrape and with his claws, and that's where it made the oh, look at that. Sorry.
Oh, flying stars.
See too many electrical issues.
It's part of the show.
Yeah. It'll happen at a different point in the show every night, so you gotta come back. Yeah.
So anyway, so the Transformer character, for me it is Finn McCool, and he lives at the Giant's Causeway back home. And he was a big old giant, and what he loved to do, he loved playing games and going over to Scotland and chatting up all the lassies there, because if everybody knows in the audience, one of the strings to a Celtic man's bow is his tongue, in more ways than one. So he would go over and chat up all the Scottish lassies, and this one fateful time, he happened to get the affections of this one girl that already had the affections of the Scottish giant, who was Tiernan Nog. So Tiernan Nog wasn't too happy that he was getting his girlfriend, so he chased him all the way back to Northern Ireland. And Finn McCool runs back, and he used his noggin, because he knew he couldn't fight the Scottish giant, because the Scottish people are so much more violent than the Northern Irish. Good job. So he used his noggin, and he hid in a baby carriage. So that then when Tiernan Nog came over, and Tiernan Nog saw him in the baby carriage, and he went, oh, sweet Jesus, if that's the size of their babies, God knows the size of their adults. So then he ran back to Scotland, and Finn McCool picked up a big rock, and he threw it at him, but it didn't get all the way across the ocean, and it landed right in the middle of the sea. And that's how the Isle of Man was created. And the cool thing about the Isle of Man is they've got lots of great cows. Now don't worry that this is so pixelated, because remember we're talking about way back in the days when there weren't computers. So that's what I love. I love the transformation characters that draw meaning. So again, if we imagine a couple of minutes ago, when we were talking about the Denisovans, that's a new word that you all learned, that those are the cave people. When they would all get around the campfire and all chat, and that's the thing that we've lost in this modern day. We've stopped listening to each other, and we've stopped telling each other stories and paying attention to each other, which is unfortunate, because when the whole familial and all the generations were around the campfire, you'd have the grandfather, you'd have the father, you'd have the children, and they'd all be together so they wouldn't be scared in the night of hearing all these things. But that's one thing that we've still held on to in this day and age, and it's the bedtime story. If we imagine Goodnight Moon, because again, a child gets to spend its entire day with its family, and it feels safe and everything, but then we send it off to a dark room on its own, and hope that it's not going to get terrified through the night. And that's why we still tell bedtime stories. So especially with Goodnight Moon, it draws attention to all these different bits and pieces that are within the room, from the squeaky rocking chair to the moon coming through the window creating shadows, even the little mouse. It draws attention and it names all these different moments that could scare the child. So if it does happen in the middle of the night, the child will realize, oh, it's just a rocking chair, nothing to be scared about, hopefully not have nightmares. So, which brings us why we're here tonight in this basement. It's very cozy, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to tell you stories. I'm going to tell you some tales that are hopefully going to draw awareness to the stigma and the myths and the fears surrounded by mental health. So I want to tell you at the start, there may be some trigger issues. It's all against storytelling. And storytelling is very subjective. It's very much like you say tomato, I say tomato, you say potato, and no one says potato. So it's a wonderful time to be alive, everyone, because before now, I really only had Comic Sans as the perfect font that I could use to craft my suicide notes. But now I've got a vast array of emojis that can tell my story straight away. So,
come with me on an adventure, a day within the days of my life. My life is not dissimilar to many people's lives. In fact, 1 in 5 people are living with mental health issues. That's around 450 million people living with some form of disorder. Depression is the leading cause of disability in the world, and mental health has many faces such as anxiety, dementia, ADHD, insomnia, bulimia, phobias, postpartum addictions, and OCD, to name but a few. And some have scarier faces than others, but all are just as important. So you're not going to believe this, but 2/3 of these people never seek help. This is due to many reasons, including stigma, discrimination, and neglect. And suicide is the #1 killer of men aged 18 to 45 in Britain. Why is this? Boys don't cry, I suppose, comes to mind. But that's just perception. You gotta let those tears flow like Niagara at times. There's no need to beat your chest into submission. Think of the tears you're saving from loved ones. I suppose I'm lucky in a sense, as my adventure hasn't ended by my own hand. But left to my own devices, I probably would. But not quite yet. I've been blessed with many issues over the years, ranging from conflict-based PTSD, depression, substance misuse, and my favourite, suicidal ideation. Every day is a battle. From the second I wake up to the moment I go to bed. Sometimes I just roll out of bed and lay on the floor for a few days without being able to move. But for me, mental health is just as life-threatening than any other disease, and yet is the most stigmatized. People seem to think depression is contagious or can be fixed with, oh, just try and smile. Grey skies are going to clear up, so put on a happy face. But yeah, we've heard it all before, so I'm not going to go on about it. Now, we all wear masks when we're out in the world, and even when it's just me, myself, and I. It's how we want to be perceived, or how we want to be projected onto, and I am no different. Here and there and everywhere, I'm mostly what you want me to be. I used to moan and groan that it was everyone else painting the mask on me and pushing these smiles on this mug of mine. But as the days and years have gone by, guess what? This is a self-portrait. My painting began as my adventure began as a wee lad, and I was applying the first strokes of my makeup at the beginning of my PTSD. So flashbacks added tears, nightmares added frowns, which very rarely got turned upside down. Divorce added sadness, and alcohol and drugs added a nice foundation for it all. This went on and on as different masks went on and on, making it darker and darker, until I started using filmmaking as a way to express myself, to turn my mess into my message. A light was turned on within. See, when we watch a film, we are immediately emotionally connected to the characters. We laugh, we cry, and we want them to win. Telling tales from different perspectives helps me understand and communicate with you. I now feel I am actually in recovery now, and the lights are on. I feel the sun, I feel the breeze, I laugh, and I love life. So there's a saying, the road is long with many a winding turn, which is good advice, but it's not very succinct. It's quite abstract and open to interpretation. Many people have told this to a plethora of people along the way, and lately I've been looking back at my own road as more of a trail of tribulations, with many accidents and detours strewn with its fair share of horrific roadkill. I've been slowing down to a near standstill to rubberneck the perceived disasters by the edge. But it would seem that if I unfold my trail in a different light, it becomes a map to my mental wellness. Those crashes and carcasses become art pieces and new recipes. Life can be full of tourist attractions off the beaten track instead of beating myself up to attract attention. So, at this crossroads, I find myself with conclusive proof that this, whatever this is, too shall pass. Whether I tell you or someone else tells you, this is the true constant life, one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there. Life is the adventure, and it's out there for us to find.
So I think you can probably tell by my accent that I'm not originally from the area. So I'm just on the road in Murray. But we're talking about way back before then. My accent probably conjures up visions of green rolling hills, leprechauns, Guinness, a magical place where we all worship a man upon high called Bono. But unfortunately that's Ireland you're thinking of. I'm from Northern Ireland. A magical place where Catholics hate Protestants, Protestants hate Catholics, and we all dodge bullets while throwing petrol bombs at each other. So, if you don't know much about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I'll give you a brief history lesson. I'm sure you've all heard the song Bloody Sunday by U2. Well, it's sort of like that, and I'll tell you the story, but unlike Bloody Sunday, this story is true. At least my version of the truth. So way back in the days, Henry VIII wanted to get rid of his wife, and he thought perhaps maybe chopping their head off wasn't the most efficient way anymore. So he thought, well, I'll get a divorce. But he forgot about the Pope, and the Pope said, I decree no divorce for ye. So he started the Church of England, and he embraced Protestantism. And Protestantism, at the basis form, is to protest something, to protest the Catholic faith. So the whole country became Protestant, except for Ireland. Southern Ireland broke away, but only in spirit. It's not as if they got a chisel out and actually chopped away at the earth. But they broke away, and it left Northern Ireland. And over the years, over the hundreds of years, they've always tried to get United Ireland back. And much like today, when somebody wants something, really it seems the only way to do it is to resort to terrorism. Blow a lot of people up and shoot a lot of people, because that certainly works and that'll get what you want, supposedly. So, now my life back home wasn't really as any different than many others back home. I lived in a small town called Hollywood, but it's just one L, so it's Holywood, because the monks all lived there, and it was a forest, so therefore it was the Holy Wood. And they all lived there until the Vikings came over, killed all the monks, and thought they should stay there. And perhaps rape, pillage, murder would, just didn't have the same ring to it, so they kept the name. So yeah, as I say, I was just doing the same old thing as all the other kids do, dodging bullets and throwing petrol bombs at each other. But there was one difference, was my dad was chief inspector of the police, which put him firmly on the IRA's legitimate target list, and me by proxy, I was there. And that originally began the first of many attempts to knock me off this mortal coil. From the first gun to my head when I was 4 years old, to the last gun to my head when I was 26, many in between, car bombings, shootings, punishment beatings, kneecappings, the whole gamut. But, I didn't have any comparison to life. So for a little boy, the adrenaline was there, and it was cool to play army. So I tiptoed and tap danced through my years there, and a lot of this footage you're seeing here is I shot it back in the days, because my first job I was a cinematographer for the police authority, and whenever the riots would start, we would go down in the Land Rovers after the Land Rovers had been smashed up too much for the police to use anymore. We would go down, stick our cameras out the top, and film everybody. And then that's what started getting people put in jail, because before then nobody would actually testify. But now we had footage, we had video, and we had photography, so there was no way they could deny it. But it also put us in the front line, because as soon as we turned up, they realized that we were the guys that were putting them in prison. So then we would be the first to be attacked. So a lot of this is all the riot footage, and you can see, it's mostly just children, attacking, and it's crazy. This, just to imagine, this is what my days and nights were like. So I started to become a ghost in life because of all this that was going on around me. And there's a misconception that a lot of people think that Celtic people, Irish people, Northern Irish people like to drink. And I'm here to tell you that it's the God's honest truth. Because even my mother's milk had an alcohol content. So this is where all you guys have to use your imagination. And we have to pretend that we are in a nice little Irish pub, and it's Sunday night, and we have the fire going, and I'm going to tell you a story. So I always had a fascination with music from an early age. Mostly just the underlying beat and the repetitive forms it would take to drown out the noise of the violence I was experiencing in life. The shootings, the bombings, the explosions. Even now I place everything to a beat. The sound of applause from this lovely audience. And the sounds of my footsteps as I cross the stage. I click my fingers to the rhythm to keep me on track. So I remember at the age of 7, I loved to play Dungeons and Dragons. I had an ancient antique called a tape cassette of That's What I Call Music, which was a compilation of the hits of the year. I would sit and listen to David Bowie's Modern Love over and over while I held the little orcs and wizards close to my face to paint the detail on, all while the fumes were making their way up my nostrils. And soon I was going to be high as a kite right then. But not for long, as my mum would have me march up and down the streets at night, forcing me to take deep breaths and clear my head. But that was my first taste of feeling truly at home. And sweet baby Jesus, I never wanted to leave that house again. I wanted it more than anything. I wanted to reach for the door of feeling at home. I wanted to turn the handle until it broke off, so I could waltz on in whenever I pleased. And there was nothing going to stop me finding the key to oblivion. Now they say marijuana is the gateway drug, but for me, it was Sharpies. Flip off the lid and have a quick sniff before progressing to stronger solvents. I found paint thinners allowed me to kiss the sky, and I had the added benefit of the wah-wahs. So I'm not sure how many of you have done solvents, but when your brain expands, you hear wah, 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 which was even better for drowning out the world again. So next up was getting my teenage kicks right through the night on LSD. Now this was the time of MTV, so the visuals came in, and fuck me, did they? Also, no exaggeration of right through the night, because I couldn't sleep for shite on acid. My first trip was on New Year's Eve, again with an ancient antique. I listened to U2's One over and over, while a giant chicken chased a baby wolf around the sky, while the clouds formed a heart around the moon at the stroke of midnight, which was certainly a sight to see. Nobody else seemed to see it, but I'm pretty sure it happened. But music and drugs go hand in hand, and there comes a time when you want to go harder and faster, and I was no exception. So techno had raised its head, and so did a little drug called ecstasy. Now never had there been a time and space that two things would complement each other so perfectly. To pop a pill, and to feel the beat, and to know what love is. To push the bass level so far that the elasticity might break, leaving you unable to spring back to reality. But what was reality at this stage? To reach for higher states of consciousness meant reaching lower levels of society in order to procure the tools of the trade. So me and my mates all went there. Some of them are still going, and others are never coming back. But this is where things are starting to take a turn for me, and I'm genuinely out of control. I'm prepared to do anything to get my fix, which is always just out of reach. But when I do get it, hello darkness, my old friend. Now, I had a wee bit of trouble. The financial side of things were really getting too strenuous to fill me up to an appropriate level. So me and my mates would buy in bulk, which would mean more journeys to the dealers of choice, hopefully to get our choice of substances, which mostly meant we got what we were given in the form of rat poison or talcum powder rather than pure MDMA. So times had changed, and rock and roll had become happy hardcore, with whistles, glow sticks and strobe lights. The filthy sweat of the bodies gyrating against each other, the energy of the crowd pulsating as the sounds took us and threw us into the atmosphere. These elements called to me like no other. I needed the beat, I needed oblivion, I needed to follow the sweet trail of ecstasy, cocaine, poppers and blow. That trail led to manumission, the hacienda, the limelight, and even Ministry of Sound. But my trail mostly took a turn to farmers' fields, barns and forests for illegal raves. Because remember, we are in Northern Ireland. On one of those nights I found myself crouching down in a bunker of a high-class golf course, with my mates looking forward to a night of debauchery. With just one problem though. Now this is where it gets very British. I like to look upon this fondly as if it was afternoon tea down at the country club. See, we had planned to smuggle in our copious amounts of contraband into the evening's fine establishment by inserting said contraband into prophylactics and then inserting those fine packages into our, how shall I say it? Into our rectums. Our arses, our bums, where the sun don't shine. Holding the little delights with our pinkies, just like a fine china teacup, we hunkered down and gave it a whirl. You see, dear audience, our bums were all virgin bums, and we had not experienced the new sensation of being a mule before. But with much slippery perseverance, I was able to find a nice snug fit. But unfortunately, my mates were having difficulty. Now, I don't think they were really trying, though, as it wasn't that hard. But then the fateful words were uttered. Will you carry mine too? See, I'm not sure which is worse. Having to risk smuggling more than my personal supply, or the fact that they would be willing to ingest some tasty morsels hot from my oven straight to their palates. But it didn't take too much persuading, as I could hear the beat in the distance, so with a few extended fingers, I was good to go. But with a new wobble in my step, we got into the line to get in. And the energy was building. I could see the crowd's faces. Some had already partaken in the evening's hors d'oeuvres and were well on their way. But as we moved closer to the gate, I began getting a little nervous, as the security was up in their game and searching people. Now remember, being at an illegal rave, there wasn't much option of actually being arrested, but more the possibility of getting a kick in the face, getting all your drugs taken off, and then the bouncers would sell them in the club themselves. So with an extra shove, I provided myself some deeper security. And I got in, and I made a beeline for the toilets to release my hostages. Now the toilets were packed, as everyone else had the same idea, and I waited patiently for a cubicle to become free, and I bounced on it. Now these cubicles were not the most luxurious. They were covered in graffiti and had a very interesting scent, delivering a bouquet of explosions that you would wish to hold your breath for. But back to the job at hand. Kecks around my ankles as I give myself a reach around. But disaster. There is no digital retrieval possible. No exposed condom to pull upon. Now the sweats are really coming, as I fear it could be stuck up there forever. Are the condoms breaking? Am I dying now from an overdose? So I make the decision. I'm going to have to ship them out. So I take a look at the toilet seat and I wonder what microbial germs might be lurking on it. But this is certainly not a time for OCD. So I sit and I squeeze and I shimmy and I squeeze, but nothing seems to be moving. My mind is racing a million miles a minute with no reprise. Then another disaster strikes. A bouncer begins pushing the doors to the cubicles in an inquiring way until he gets to mine. Hey, what's going on in there? Bang, bang, bang! A new repetitive beat that I certainly did not enjoy. Bang, bang, bang! As he knocked on the door. Bang, bang, bang! Don't worry, Sonny. I'll be out here waiting for you. Bang, bang, bang! And the sound of his footsteps retreated to lean against the sinks to wait for his prey. Fuck, fuck, fuck. but a blessing in disguise. As I forgot to tell you, I do suffer from IBS, and I had a massive portion of fish and chips and mushy peas for dinner. It was a blessing in disguise because anxiety triggers irritable bowel syndrome. Fish and chip diarrhea books a one-way ticket out of my arse, condoms and all. Bouncer still pounding, precious cargo in a sea of filth, but there's no time to think. Hands straight in the dripping shit juice, still no time to think. Bouncer still pounding, no time to think. Condoms in my mouth. As I sneak out the door and into the crowd to freedom and to rendezvous with my cohorts. But now the plan at hand is to transfer my ever so sweet tasting treats to my eager disciples. Again, no time for thinking, but plenty of time for kissing. One by one, I locked lips past the packages like a mother crow regurgitates breakfast into the mouths of her waiting flock. They tasted me, I tasted them. We all tasted like shit. But we danced and pranced the night away, and many others in the years to come. And we parted ways along the way, but we never spoke of that night again. But you see, at this stage, I was really disappearing, and I was really becoming a ghost. You know, I couldn't talk to people, I couldn't communicate, I couldn't do anything. All I did was my force and my push for drinking drugs to find oblivion. But there was an interesting thing that happened along the way, because although I was the ghost, I was also the king. So Elvis had started enjoying a resurgence while I was enjoying my downfall. Initially at this time, I thought of Elvis as just not very flattering, as the old chubby one, you know, just eating cheeseburgers and shooting the TV at the end of his career and the end of his life. But thanks to a lot of remixes, Suspicious Minds was re-released, and I saw that one day on the TV. I saw the video, and this was just right when Elvis became, you know, in his white jumpsuit, and he was at Vegas. And he was perfect. And I saw his eyes, I saw his lip, and I saw his chest, and I saw his lips. And it hypnotized me, and it beamed that passion right into my loins. Because if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, that's where passion lives. It's in your loins. And you just gotta know where to direct it. So yeah. So as I say, I was the ghost, but I was also the king. And I would sit on my bar stool, not talking to anybody, not communicating with anybody. You know, because the best place to be at a bar back home is to stand beside a column. Because if anybody comes in and sprays the place with bullets, you've at least got a bit of protection. So I would sit there just quiet, just drinking away until I would fall off the stool. Until one thing would happen. The jukebox would light up, and the first couple of twangs of Suspicious Minds would start, and my hips would start going. And it would shimmy me up to the stage, and I would start doing Elvis. And my lip was curling, and my hips were ringing. And I would realize at that time, because again, the bars back home, people were just pretending to have fun. People were just pretending to just drinking, just until the atmosphere built, until they could hit someone in the face with a bottle, and then the riots would start. And it was a real terrible thing, but again, everyone in the country was a terrible alcoholic to deal with the troubles, so it was what you had to do. But one thing I would notice when I was up on the stage, and I would be given, you know, a wet beer and a lot of homes, that the atmosphere would relax, you know? And what I realized was Catholics hate Protestants, Protestants hate Catholics, but everybody loves Elvis. And I say the atmosphere would dissipate. But then I would go off the stage and back to my stool. So I'd go from the ghost to the king to the stage, back to the stool, and just be quiet again. It was very much of an enigma for people, but that was my initial concept and origination of conflict resolution. You know, and I started touring the bars, I started touring the clubs, I started touring the community centres, anywhere that there was two warring factions. You know, it didn't specifically have to be Catholic Protestants, but it could just be gangs, whatever. And I would do my show. And it was amazing how you could bring two groups of people together that were originally, you know, ready to kill each other. And by the time my hips would be changing the world. And I did. I started traveling the world doing Elvis for Peace. And I came to America, and it was interesting because this was just after 9/11, and I was the first, I was a single male traveling from a perceived terrorist country. And I would always get pulled by the TSA, and I would get put into the little room that's not really America, and I'd have to be in that little square that's not really America, and I would be interrogated, and I would be pushed, and I went to Tunisia once because they made Star Wars there. You go and see where Luke Skywalker lived, but it's a Muslim country, so I had a Muslim stamp in my passport, so that would just add more troubles. But they would search me, and they would start getting out my bag, and it was pretty crazy, because as soon as the tiger skin would start to appear out of my stuff, they would just let me go. It's because, like, how could I be a terrorist? How could I hate America when I have so much love for an American icon? And I thought to myself, you know, Al-Qaeda's doing this all wrong. They should just dress up as the Memphis Mafia and then they can do whatever they want. But yeah, so that was Elvis. But again, you know, how did I actually get to America afterwards? So the Good Friday Agreement was on April 10th, 1998. And it was a time back home where we had to go and vote for peace. Everyone had to go, and we just had to vote yes or no. Now, me being a young macho man, very masculine, or young dumb full as cum, is what is more commonly known as, you know, I voted no. Now, not because I didn't want peace, and I knew that my vote wouldn't change anything, because as we're all pretty aware, voting doesn't really change anything, it doesn't count for anything, but I voted no, because I didn't agree with the terms. Because a lot of the terrorists, a lot of the people that had been served time for murder and terrorist atrocities were now going to be able to be politicians. You know? And I didn't agree with that. Because the guy, again, for Bloody Sunday, the guy that admitted firing the first shot became the Minister for Education in Northern Ireland, and I didn't agree with that. So I voted no. And then, due to that, Bill Clinton came over and he turned the Christmas lights on and played a saxophone, and then there was peace. So it was pretty crazy. And there was a special visa invented for people like me who were directly affected by the Troubles to come to America. And my memory is sort of just like one of those big claws, the teddy bear claws. You know, it just came over from America, went down, picked me up by my ear, and dropped me over and dropped me in Boston. But just remember, I was very, very drunk, so I'm sure it was a lot harder than that. And I came to America, you know, I came to Boston, and it was wonderful for about 6 months. You know, I could go where I wanted, I could chat up where I wanted, I could go anywhere, because again, back home, people don't know, but there's a wall called the Peace Line, which divides the Catholic and Protestant areas together. So it's, even now, there's still half the country that I've never been able to go to. So again, I didn't need to worry about that. I could just do whatever I wanted, and it was fantastic. But one of the smaller things of my mental health issues is dyslexia. And I mix up words, I mix up letters, and I can't really read and write very well. That's why I choose to communicate visually. But as I say, when I mix up letters and I spell wrong, there are 4 letters that I will never mix up, never spell wrong. That's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is the crowning achievement of my mental health issues. That's really punished me badly over the years. So as I say, you know, living in Boston for 6 months and not having to worry, one of my main things is hypervigilance. And hypervigilance, if you don't know, it's sort of like spidey sense. You know, it warns you of danger. And if you're a real spider, it warns you of dinner. Mostly my hypervigilance always warned me of danger. It never told me when dinner was coming. But the hypervigilance started kicking in because it's about 95% of my being was having this radar. You know, trying to work out, why are those people there? Why is that car parked there? Is it a bomb? Whatever. You know, I'm very much a people pleaser. I'm very much the guy that's going to jump on a hand grenade to save everybody else. So I was always just had this sixth sense when things were going to go wrong. But because I didn't need to worry about that in Boston, suddenly my hypervigilance decided, okay, well, I need to exist, I need to feed on something. So it delved into my random access memory, you know, really deep down, that sort of place that stores all the 80s like rock, heavy metal lyrics that you can suddenly just sing. But it pushed Slash and it pushed Axl out of the way, and it pulled in some choice memories to haunt me with. You know, and this is where the haunting started. I can really pinpoint it, you know, because there were some forms of sobriety back then, and if I could manage to get to bed, I would do a little jig in my covers because I'd be so happy. But then as soon as I fall asleep, that would be followed by a sleepwalking jig to the freezer to down a bottle of vodka, and then I'd just go and wander out in the snow in my boxer shorts. Now, I was very lucky at the time that my roommates were all students, so they were nocturnal, and they were able to come out and rescue me and pull me back in before I really embodied Jack Nicholson from The Shining, you know, freezer. But just like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, this is really where my ghost started haunting me. And Scrooge McDuck had a great night's sleep compared to these visitations. So, Poptastic folks, welcome to the hit parade of top 3 flashbacks. In at number 3, every move you make, somebody's watching you, and it's not Sting, it's the IRA, and they've planted a bomb under your bed. No sleep till morning. In at number 2, what's that? Is it a dog? Is it a cat? No, it's someone's being tarred and feathered as a punishment beating, and he's reaching out to you for help, but you can't help him or you'll be an accessory. And at number 1, quite literally straight in with a bullet, it's murder on the dance floor. It's dragged out of a car with a gun to your head, so realistic that you can feel the muzzle on your skull for days. So, trying to deal with that, you know? And again, when these flashbacks started, they were so realistic, I had no idea. You know, again, I was very, very drunk, so I didn't understand what was going on. I truly believed that these things were real. You know, and as these destructive memories started on me, again, I didn't realize what to do. So again, I closed my eyes, you know, pushed them out of the way. Because we all know when you do that, it makes things disappear. Just like when you play peekaboo with a child, baby. So we can try it now, okay? Peekaboo. Peekaboo, peekaboo. Shite, you're all still here. My social anxiety was really raising. I was hoping I could just go home. So, again, I was really falling into the ghost period now. And I couldn't feel anything, I didn't know anything. A lot of times when you experience trauma, your body shuts down. You know, and you remove yourself in disconnection and dissociation. And I was no different, but again, I didn't realize what was going on. To me, again, trying to understand things, it sort of felt like I was playing a computer game, you know, and I had an out-of-body experience, and I was way up here, and I could just move left and right, I could go forward, I could drive, I could go to work, I could function, but I couldn't feel anything. I didn't know what was going on. And another way to explain it is sort of like the holodeck in Star Trek. You know? Because again, a lot of the violence that was against me and all these flashbacks were coming at me, the way I sort of understood it was I managed to convince myself that I was actually living in a computer program inside a computer software. And I believed that if I had truly designed this computer program that I was moving through, it would make no sense that I would have anything in there that would hurt me. Again, just like the holodeck, just like when Picard or whoever goes in, you know, he can fight whatever he wants and no one's going to hurt him. So whenever a violence aspect would come to present itself to me, I could deal with it unemotionally, you know, and survive. Sort of like a Street Fighter super move, you know, left, right, punch back, boss battle complete. But it was terrible because I had no clue, I just couldn't connect, I couldn't feel, I couldn't do anything. And I lived like that for about 7 years. Until one day I was driving home from work on my scooter, and I stopped at the lights, and there was a Hummer beside me. And I thought to myself, you know, that's a pretty fascinating engineered piece of kit for an urban setting. You know, I must be a pretty much genius if I designed all these things. And then I looked at all the people, and they were all different. I looked at the trees, I looked at the shops, and everything was different. And I thought to myself, you know, if I truly had designed this computer program that I was living in, why would I waste all this energy and subroutines to design everyone so differently? It would make more sense, everything should just be squares and circles and stick people, and but that wasn't the case. And pretty much immediately, it was like a light switch was turned on, and I felt that I was alive. All these emotions all came rushing in. Again, another Star Trek reference, when Data gets the emotions chip, and he can't handle it because it's all too much. That's what it was, and to me, it was sort of like Bad Boys 2, when like Will Smith and the other bad boy stands up, and the other bad boy says, shit just got real. And that's what it was like for me. But again, feeling all these emotions and feelings that had suddenly hit me, again, I had no clue what to do. I didn't know how to deal with it. So again, back to the old ways. Drink and drug to drown everything, just to knock myself out even more. And it just killed me and killed me and killed me. But of course I went to therapy. I went to all the different types and nothing would resonate with me. I went to psychiatrists, I went to standard talk therapy, I went to support groups, and nothing resonated with me. I even went to a guy that made me jump on a trampoline while he poked me in the forehead while he wore a jockstrap. And I really have no idea what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to invoke like a primal scream within me to release my energy, but it certainly wasn't going. So again, I had to try and find my own ways, because most of my therapists would just sit there with their mouths open, I don't even know how to deal with these issues, these stories, these memories that you're having. Can I have $200, please? So again, it didn't work for me. So again, the bottle worked for me. And I gotta tell you, because like monsters do exist. And I'm not talking about hairy, pointed teeth, scary beasts from myths and legends, although those are grounded in reality. And I'm talking about the monsters that we create within ourselves. Like people that have anger issues. You can think of that as a werewolf, because people do truly explode, and then they can't dissipate until the anger goes away, and then they're left with broken crockery and ripped clothes, and they don't know what's going on. But again, that's the werewolf, and I sort of looked at myself as more of a Jekyll and Hyde type thing, because I had to ingest a potion, or a substance in order to create my monster. And I felt so devastated inside, I was just broken monstrosity, that I would go to the mirror every night, and I would snarl, and I would shout, and I would try and physically contort my face to try and create an actual physical beast to match the emotional beast. And I would also set up a camera and film myself, to film my downfall into a drunken mess until I was on the floor, hoping that the next day I could watch it and then scare myself into sobriety. But to this day, I've still never watched any of those tapes. I have about 100 of them. And now we're about to premiere one right now. No, that's only a joke, I'm still not ready. I'm still not ready to just want to watch them for 2 hours, throwing up at myself. But I was a total shadow. I was at one, I'd gone from the ghost to the king, and now I was just a shadow. Very transparent shadow, because everyone could see through me. But yeah, I was just this horrible, horrible beast. And when I would go to the emergency rooms, and tell them these stories, tell them that I was hearing these voices, tell them I was living in a holodeck, it sounded very sane, of course, to these nurses. But I didn't know how to communicate, and that's when I first got put into my first psych ward, my first place in Boston. And it really wasn't the last time. I've been in and out for about 10 years, but it was my very first time. And that first time it came complete with its very own Nurse Ratched, but unfortunately it didn't have a water fountain, so I didn't even know how that I could plan my escape. But they were fun little holiday homes for the time being. So bananas, nuts, and crackers are all ways to describe losing your mind. And at this point, I was truly losing my mind. I was totally out of it. Somehow, I'd managed to get some poor girl to fall in love with me and marry me at this stage. And we were having a baby. But that was my wife, and she's more commonly known as my ex-wife these days. But we were having this baby, and she wanted to have a natural childbirth. So she chose hypno babies to do it. And that's basically like I learned to hypnotize her to lull away the pain. Unfortunately, I couldn't hypnotize myself to lull away my own pain, but you know, the time came and her water broke, and I did what all good husbands do. I got her into the car and I brought my little bag full of stuff for her, but I'd forgotten to bring a special little bag for me, full of my own liquid needs. So I ran back into the house and I filled up a bottle of Coke with whiskey and I smuggled it in. We got to the hospital and I was really hoping for a really quick birth. But unfortunately, after 16 hours of hypnobabies and look into my eyes, you're feeling sleepy, it wasn't happening. And I was thinking, you know, how am I going to get outside? How am I going to get out to down all this whiskey to get back inside so that they don't know that I'm drunk, you know? And then after 16 hours, Charlie, my son, he decided, well, I'm going to hang myself with the umbilical cord. And he did that, and then it was going to be a cesarean. And it also came time for the doctors to say, no more hypnobabies for the cesarean. But we went in, we got all scrubbed up, and it was pretty cool because the doctors, you know, it was like a magic trick. They just put up a sheet, and then they made a baby appear. And they handed me the baby, and I held the baby, you know, and I looked into his eyes, he looked into mine, and I would love to tell you that things changed, but it didn't. I gave the baby back to the nurse, and I went home to get drunk. And I drank for a week, and I didn't go back to the hospital. I just left him there until my ex-wife and Charlie came home. But unfortunately at that stage it really wasn't a home anymore with me there. So with hindsight, it was pretty great that the locks were changed and I was given my marching orders. And I was given 3 cans of soup, but no can opener. And that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago I walked out of my old life and into my new. But at the beginning there was a year of homelessness in between. And I lived at the road home at night, and between the road home and then if I could muster enough money, I'd also stay at Camelot, that little yellow, blue, you might have seen it. But I would live there, and then I would spend my days wandering. And at this stage, I had really just given up. You know, I tried everything to get better, you know, for 20 odd years, and nothing was resonating with me. And at this stage, I just embraced my addictions, embraced my demons, and I was drinking myself to death at that stage, because there was nothing else for me. And I would just have this circumference of anger and hate around me, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And again, with that circumference, nobody knew how to come and attract me. And if we go back to the flashbacks, you know, those were killing me, you know, just the daily, the gun to my head, you know, all night, just this constant gun to my head, and then all through the day, just a perceived gun to my head, right in the forehead, just feeling the muzzle right there. And then one day, I was in the park, sitting there, angry, just pissed off, drinking, and there was a family having a picnic. And again, there was kids there, and of course children, they don't know. They don't feel the anger, they don't feel the pain. You know, with their curiosity and their naivety, they came over them. And they had bananas with them, because they were playing army. And they both looked at me, and they took one look at the banana, and they both fired off 1 shot each. And you might be thinking, or might be hoping, that triggered me. And I gotta say, yes it did, but not in a negative way. Because for whatever reason at that moment, the idea popped into my head that if those 2 little kids are truly believing that those bananas are guns, which they are in a child's imagination, there's no reason why I can't believe the opposite is true, that guns are bananas. And I started drawing. I had an old envelope and I had some crayons and I started drawing. Now my artistic skills aren't the best, so it was just stickman. But I drew my memories. I drew the first one of me on the ground with a guy but holding a banana in my head. You know, and I painted this and I sculpted it and I animated it. And it took about 6 months, but it changed my flashbacks. Now it didn't change my memories. I'm still fully aware that it was gun violence, but it changed my flashbacks. And that's where the trouble is, because that's where the subconscious is trying to sabotage you. And I wasn't scared anymore. You know, I began lucid dreaming and I could interact with it and I could take the banana off him. You know, I never got to the point where I could share it with him, but I started realizing 2 things, 2 ridiculous things. One, he's trying to kill me with a banana. He might as well put the skin on the ground and hope that I slip on it and bang my head. But 2, he's trying to kill me because of perception, because of what I represent to him. He's not trying to kill Brian Higgins. He's not trying to kill specific. He's trying to kill what his perceived enemy is. And it took, I say, 6 months, and then I got sober, and I was back in the workplace. But it wasn't a be-all and end-all. because this next bit is brought to you by the letters AA. So it wasn't the first time that I'd gone to an AA meeting. My first meeting was when I was 19. And I remember thinking, right, it's time, I gotta go. And this particular one was in a little room above a corner shop in Belfast. And I got all dressed up in my 3-piece suit, because I thought there'd be girls there. And I walked up the stairs, the rickety stairs, and I was waiting to come in, and I thought they would all just give me a standing ovation, because of course I was the one they were waiting for, waiting for years and years. But of course I went in, and nobody batted an eyelid. And there were no girls there, it was just a bunch of old men. And they were sitting there, and they were talking about how excited they were, because one of them had bought a new cooker, a new stove, and they were going to go home after the meeting and cook some steaks. And this certainly did not resonate with me, because I still had many years and many drinks to go. But at this stage after the banana, I went slinking on in with my head held low and my tail firmly between my legs. And I went into the old meeting at the Sizzler up in 400 South there. And I sat down and I said those immortal words. I'm Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. But, again, it wasn't a magic fix. It wasn't the easy thing that I wanted. So, for everyone paying attention, when I first came in, and I talked about my footsteps, how many steps did I take? No, it wasn't 12. It was only 3. And the third step and the 12 steps was the hardest one. I know it's the hardest one for a lot of people to do. So I had to think about a higher power. I had to put all my faith into a higher power. And again, because where I'm from, religion has a lot to answer for. So I certainly wasn't going to be putting my faith in the beardy boy in the sky in the cloud. So I thought to myself, what do I believe in? And I believe in science. I believe in the Big Bang. And you imagine that when the Big Bang happened billions of years ago, and if this was a Trump story, it would be billions and billions and billions and billions of years ago. And the Big Bang happens, and it explodes, and it all goes out in a spherical motion, and it makes all these little other spheres, and they start circling around each other while they're circling by themselves, and life begins on Earth. And again, life is pretty much a circle. We're born, we live, we die. We're born, we live, we die. And days are a circle, so it's morning, afternoon, evening, morning, afternoon, evening, on and on and on and on. But then I started getting really confused and getting really angry with myself because, again, the dyslexia was coming in. And I know I bear a striking resemblance to Neil deGrasse Tyson. But unfortunately, that's really only where the similarities come to an end. My astrophysics is to be seen. So again, I was confused. I didn't know what to do. And then I realized, okay, everything is a circle. And I remembered that time that I was driving home from work on the scooter. And I thought everything should be simplified. Everything should be a square. Everything should just be circles. And then I realized the universe. Yes, we can get all pissed off and all annoyed that it goes and goes and goes. But in the end, it's all just circles. The simple thing. Because again, my troubles, to me, seemed to be massive. So I expected my answer had to be just as massive. But in the end, my answer was the simple thing of a banana. And today, as I stand here in front of you, I still live to the beats, to the simplified form. I listen to my heartbeat, and I get more from a drink of water and a deep breath than anything I ever did in drugs or drink-wise. And if I can truly listen to my heartbeat and just close my eyes and let everything fade away, I can live to the sound of silence. Good night. You all came out at 9 o'clock on a Friday. This is Randin Graves, one of my great friends. And he did the soundscape and everything. And I remember like when I was homeless and I was down at the road home and stuff, you know, I was still given visitation rights to see my little boy. And I remember once, you know, Randin let me come and stay with you for an afternoon, and you played the didgeridoo for Charlie, and it was wonderful, you know. So we're never always truly alone. But thank you very much.